YOLK is back. YOLK is back. YOLK is back. YOLK is back.
Generation Next.
YOLK is back.
YOLK is back.
Welcome to YOLK.
YOLK is back.
Hi, everyone. This is Summer with OG YOLK, and we are here with our guest host again. She sounds like a regular host now, Barbara Chen. She used to write for YOLK Magazine, and we're so happy to have her be here for our next guest. And Barbara, take it.
Thanks, Summer. So, from her groundbreaking career as one of the country's first Asian women correspondents and network anchors to the grief of losing the first love of her life just weeks after the birth of their daughter, Carol Lynn has synthesized and survived so many stories, not the least of which is her own. And we have the great pleasure of talking with Carol today about her memoir, When News Breaks, which debuts this month, early December. So, welcome and thank you, Carol.
Hi, Barbara. Thank you so much. And Summer, you too. It's such a pleasure to be with you guys.
Carol, for those who don't know and don't recognize you, you were born and raised in LA, graduated UCLA, cut your teeth in Washington, D.C., reported locally in LA, and then headed to New York. You worked for ABC News, also one of my alma maters, and then went to CNN's what were then their headquarters in Atlanta. And you were there in the chair, the anchor chair, on the morning of 9/11. But you also reported extensively from the field on so many major stories, the LA riots, Columbine, you were in Kosovo, Israel, and the Palestinian territories, Pakistan, Afghanistan. And meanwhile, you had a life, as one would hope, or tried to, behind the scenes. And that's really what your memoir so poignantly reconstructs. And I just I both respect very much and want everyone listening and watching to recognize the entendre that I see in the book's title, When News Breaks. And is it fair to say, I mean, this was meant for us to understand the high cost, the sacrifice, the price of a so-called, glamorous career in TV news. When news breaks, what? When news breaks a marriage, when news breaks a person. Could you elaborate a little bit on the title?
Barbara, I'm so grateful that that's what you got out of the read and your deep understanding of why the title is as it is, because it really is to speak to all of us, not just a career in news. And I didn't set out to write a book, an autobiography, so to speak. I set out to write a memoir that honors and addresses what all of us eventually will go through. All of us will face our challenges in our relationships and in our careers and personal choices, and ask ourselves, what would we do when news breaks? What will we do? How will we rise to the occasion? And that is the book that I set out to write. It is not a natural instinct for a journalist to write about themselves. And you know this, being a journalist yourself, we're conditioned and trained to tell other people's stories. And I think in reflection upon all these years and the personal story that I tell about how the news shaped our family, what I came to realize is, as much as we cover other people's stories, we take part of that story with us. And the nature of news, especially breaking news, it is largely going to be someone else's tragedy, someone else's terrible loss. And though we can say to ourselves, especially in broadcast journalism, that it's hours of coverage for minutes of glory, moments in front of the camera, and then we walk away, but we never really walk away. And I think in writing this, what I realized is that we take pieces of all those stories with us. And even many times unbeknownst to us, those stories teach us later, encourage us later. There's one story in particular that I wrote about in local news of a young mother who was the victim of a home invasion robbery. Her husband was murdered in front of her. She was shot and had to play dead because her baby was in the next room. And even though there are aspects of that story that sound so familiar in the genre of local news, when it bleeds, it leads. But that was a story that stayed with me my entire career. And I think it informed what happened to me later on, this journey to becoming a mother, making decisions about my own family, how I was going to see grief and loss, and remembering the courage of that mother and her and what she had to do to make sure that she could eventually give her baby her best life.
That particular, the recounting of that story really shook me as well because it happened in Torrance, if I remember correctly, and that's my hometown.
Yeah.
I mean, I was in New York at the time of this tragedy, but it just is like, things can happen, in your backyard and you have no idea of them, but they have these, it's not just the primary victim and the impact on her, but absolutely on her child. And I just want to pause for a moment to recognize something that you touched on, and it's this paradox, right? That there's this perverse truth that, particularly in television news and in media coverage, tragedy equals coverage, and coverage equals airtime or opportunity for those in the profession. And I always was troubled by but struggled with the reality of that. I worked for many years with the police department, and it always bothered me that these horrible stories of human suffering were sometimes treated like currency among reporters and within different spheres. How did you decompress and escape or find balance instead of bitterness? At that sort of unfortunate symbiotic relationship, like how did you keep going without, folding in on yourself?
That's a great question, Barbara, because I think at the time I didn't. I think at the time I built layers and walls that the abnormal became normal because it had to be. I wrote about this strangeness of waking up to all news radio, and it's the body count, right? It's the car crashes overnight, it's the murders overnight, it's sitting with a bowl of cereal and a cup of coffee, sort of wondering what was their last meal. How do you ever know that that is going to be your last conversation with your loved one, and you're only going to get in your car and not see another day? But then it becomes, is that going to be the lead story tonight? Is that something I have to think about logistically? Where did it happen? How long is it going to take to get there? Is there going to be a better story to lead the evening newscast? And we begin to think about other people's story. You're right. It's a currency. It's a currency of the industry itself. But I think for the individual reporter, it's process. And it's not until later, I think, when we have enough lived experience where we grow our empathy and our relationship with other people's stories. As well as anybody, journalism is a very competitive profession. It's all about who gets there first, who gets there fastest, how we get the facts. We're so worried about the process. And I really don't think it's until later, when we go through our own breaking news, that we begin to truly understand not only what grief is, but great joy, which is the flip side of grief. And I'm so grateful that I did not write this too close to my career, that I gave it breathing space and time, because I have so much gratitude for everything, and life itself, but that I can I can take all this experience and apply it to the raising of my own child, who's now a young adult. And, we can have these conversations. And I feel like the conversations are richer and more informed because I understand what it is to live, because I understood so many people's stories of how it is tragically people die, how things can happen in a split second, in TV, in the editing process, you can move frames of video forward and back. You can literally see the split second when someone was alive on that plane and when someone is no longer with us. And again, at the time, it's process, and it's not until later that you realize that how bizarre that is to be able to see life and death in that kind of process paradigm, and then when it happens to you, to feel it very differently.
Yeah.
I have a small
Go
question.
ahead.
Oh, sorry,
No,
Bob.
please.
A lot of people write their own memoirs, and most of the time I see, I mean, I don't read a lot of them, but I saw that some of them get written by somebody else, like ghostwriting but yours is totally you. So, did you have any writing? Um, does the journalism help that part of your writing to make it for your memoir? I mean, how did that? It's creative. It's a creative side. Is journalism for both of you guys, right? Is journalism part of a creative process, even though it sounds like when you watch the news, it sounds like it's just monotone and facts,
Mm-hmm.
but yours has
Maybe
emotion.
more opinion these days, right?
Yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah.
so just because I had a journalism background, broadcast journalism background, absolutely does not mean that I know how to write a book.
Mm,
So initially, I set out to do this back in 2008, and then I ended up, for personal reasons, setting it aside. And it was shortly after I had left CNN, so a lot was fresh in my mind. But actually, for many reasons, it was good that I waited to have more context.
mm,
But to answer your question, no, writing a book is a very different process. And to you make a very good point. I didn't use a ghostwriter. I could have, but it would have been very different. There's no one who can fully write the scenes that you live. I think the writer has to do that. AI cannot do that. I did not use AI for any aspects of this book. I am a human who wrote a book, and it was humans who edited the book. And I'm really grateful for that. And on this date, you can tell. I think you can really tell. Although apparently Chat GPT loves a good M dash, and I love a good M dash. And so people will see M dashes, think that I used AI, but I did not. But to your point, no, I think writing memoir is not writing autobiography, which is, dates. It's very historical, right? And I am not a historical figure. Memoir has a very specific theme to it, and it is very disciplined. So there are a lot of people who are not in the book, and I have to kind of warn them because it's not autobiographical. The theme of this book starts with what my writing program calls the big question. And the big question for me that guided the writing was why we love who we love, and when, if ever, is the right time to let go of the people and things that no longer serve you.
mm.
And the discipline of memoir is applying that. The big question changed. It started there, moved, and it just circled back to that question. And I hope I fulfilled that promise and that exploration.
I would say, as someone who's read the book, I granted we have some similarities in our background, and so it may have resonated with me more deeply than it may for others. But the book really surfaces so many themes. And as I read, I marked, first I noticed, and then I began to mark where I recognized the underlying, like the impact of self-identity or the questioning of your identity and the discovery of your identity, the very clear levers of power in the media industry, in which you were embedded, the stinging expectations of immigrant parents and their own resilience. But also great love, and that gets back to your central question. And the only tweak I would have in reaction is that what I saw and what I felt in this book was like, your love of the pursuit of information, love of profession, love of partner, and finally, and really subtly, and I wouldn't say hesitantly, but like this was with great humility and struggle, love of yourself, right? And what I took from this is like that often that self-love is the hardest to achieve. And you realize it only after you maybe have gone through all these hoops and all of these really trying, you know, times, which the reader will experience, you know, through your lenses. So let us give our listeners and our audience today a little glimpse of some of that. And we did ask if you might read a few passages. So maybe you could start us where the book starts, and then we can continue from there.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. And in fact, I just got the proof of the book. So I'm super excited to actually be able to hold it and read from it. So I know we're not doing a writing lesson here, but I got to tell you, chapter 1 of any memoir, any book is supposed to tell the reader what the book is about. And I had an editor who really challenged me. I thought I just nailed my manuscript. I thought I was there. And she said, you know, Carol, a lot of interesting things happened in your life, but I'm still not sure what the book is about. I'm like, what? She has a really good point, because again, memoir is very specific. It's not autobiographical. It has to be about something that the reader relates to. And chapter 1 takes place shortly, about 4 weeks after 9/11, and I'm standing on the border of Afghanistan. I'm standing in Pakistan on the border with Afghanistan, and I have an encounter with the Taliban. And this is what it means to be held in the gaze of other people. Chapter 1, Crosshairs. I was on high ground, taller than the crowd of Pashtun men around me, but to the Taliban fighter I was small, only 2 inches high in the crosshairs of his gun sight. I held my breath as he examined me, a woman exposed in a foreign land, dressed in denim but feeling stripped by his gaze. Across a dried-up riverbed, he rocked side to side and steadied his aim. I was used to men measuring me with their eyes, gauging my value, judging whether I was special enough to be the target of their love or worthy of their power to bestow a professional opportunity. All my life, men had shaped my self-worth with their gaze, pressing in with their judgments like potters molding clay. Was I smart enough to make them look smarter? Did I know how to take risks that made a TV network more competitive? Was I humble enough to take criticism or quietly accept when they told me no? Anywhere I went, it was all about who had the power. Here, it was an armed terrorist. Back in the air-conditioned newsrooms I was used to, it was male news executives with piles of resume tapes from reporters half my age who'd take my job at a quarter of my salary, who reminded me that I was never the one in control. I was replaceable. That's what it's like to be in the crosshairs of a different sort. Their eyes measuring the current value of a professional climber like me at the summit of my career. The more money I made, the more excuse executives had to ask, what is she really worth? Of course, the bones of solid journalism mattered equally across genders, but as a female journalist, I was always sensing there was something skin deep that I had to bring. Just the sight of me on the small screen had to inspire the viewer's respect, but also their desire. See me, trust me, but want me too. Keep inviting me into your home, your living room, your bedroom, day and night. But in these weeks immediately after 9/11, careers were made or broken. So stay nimble and alert. Go live, break news, but for God's sake, stay alive. Passages from chapter 1. And that was my response to my editor's critique. If you want to know what this book is about, it's about finding your identity in the gaze of others. And as many of us do, as kids, what are we going to do but see ourselves through the eyes of our parents and our community? And as you move in a career, the irony of choosing a career where you are nothing but in the gaze of other people, being judged for so many things that, and by the way, this book is not a feminist diatribe. It is simply the inner life of so many women, myself and others. And it doesn't matter how many awards we've won or how many war zones we've stood in, that the standards are always going to be different. And I don't fault the system. That is the system that we have, and we push back in so many, we have a sisterhood that raises these issues in different forums. But I wanted to write from a really honest point of view that this is not the story of a gonzo journalist. You're not going to read this book. There are far more famous people than I who have far more, glorious war stories to tell. But I think it was important that this was the height of my career. I mean, breaking the news of 9/11 at CNN on my morning show turned out to be, it was the summit. And you never know when you're at the summit because you always think you're moving along and moving ahead. But how ironic, and I hopefully how human it is to feel that vulnerable when you really, by so many other people's standards, you have it all. What more could you possibly want? But therein lies a little bit of the price that you pay.
I think just to provide a little bit of backstory, and in this day and age, we don't always take the time to reflect on this. But so prior to 9/11, in the early 90s, I can recall very few other Asian American, Pacific Islander female reporters on air in LA. And, YOLK, the magazine, its audience and readership was evolving at the same time that your career was developing. But YOLK was written and curated by and for Asian America, if you will, the next generation. You were a pioneering Asian, in the mainstream. And I just wonder if you could share an anecdote or two about audience reactions that you drew that were encouraging or, quite the opposite in LA and elsewhere.
Well, I think certainly one way to stand out is to be one of the very few. At the same time, I think we all know and recognize that Connie Chung, I mean, you talk about a pioneer, but Connie Chung was a larger than life figure for my family, my parents, and then ultimately professionally me, because while she was the first, I was arguably the second, but because there wasn't anyone else, they thought I was Connie Chung. Everywhere I went, I was Connie. People would yell, they'd holler from, Connie, Connie. And they were so disappointed when they found out that I was not Connie Chung. And there was a brief period of time where actually I just played along because they seemed so happy. They thought they'd met Connie and Connie was covering their local community, whatever might be happening. But, there came a time where I felt like I needed to clarify and say, no, I'm not Connie. And they'd say, yes, you are. Yes, you are. No, I'm Carol. I'm Carol Lynn. And I never changed my name for television. But then they would say, Carolyn, what's your last name? And that went on for, another 10 years or so. I mean, even when I got to ABC News, Good Morning America, World News Tonight, and I was covering the Freeman standoff in Montana, they all thought I was Connie. And I was just like, Connie is not here. Connie is not in the room. And yet we owe so much to her extraordinary career. But that says more about where our society was at the time than it was about me. I never felt that she took anything away from me. I felt that people were just so easily confused. And what did that say about the diversity, the lacking diversity in newsrooms? And I'm grateful that newsrooms can have more than one Asian now. There used to be this unspoken rule that you can only have one Asian, which of course pitted us against each other, right? Mm-hmm. Because if I was in one newsroom, there was this assumption that Barbara couldn't be there too. And that should be further from the case. You and I are completely unique, different human beings with different skills and stories to tell. But there is this typecasting that to some degree goes along with being on camera. And at the same time, I think, back in the 90s, 80s, 90s, and even into the 2000s, there was this assumption that you could only have one, if any at all. Mm-hmm. And I just happened to hit in my career the point after Connie had blazed a trail so bright and distinctive that it was more difficult, more challenging for people to recognize me as someone unique and different.
Yeah.
But we love the girl.
And you absolutely were your own individuals. Two questions. One, did you happen to read Connie's memoir?
Yes, yes. And I would argue that Connie's memoir is an autobiography. I mean, she's very diligent about historical facts and naming names, including influential school teachers. And it was, what I really love, and it's very difficult, it's harder than one might imagine, but Connie kept her voice. Like that was Connie's voice in her memoir. It was bright and spunky and humorous. Obviously, there were some very serious events that she went through. She was very candid about the public humiliations of a network sidelining her, so to speak, even though she had so much more work to do. Um, I think that it was a documentation that would be important for someone like her to clear the record, which I think is different than memoir. I think
Yeah.
we have a very, very good sense of her lived experience. And I think my memoir is different in that you have less of the detail of the lived experience and you have more of the vulnerability, the interiority. I know Connie talked about, her efforts to conceive, and I'm not saying anything that's not public record at this point. Um, and I think anyone going through that is going to relate to that.
Mhm.
People who've read my book, an early copy of my book, here's what they say: "Wow, you really went there." And uh, and and I think that's what memoir does. She did a fantastic job. We now can celebrate, and she can celebrate her career. She can hold that book and say, "I am more than the lowest points in my life, and I have the highest points yet to achieve." She can proudly hold that book and say that. I think when I hold my book, I can say I'm finally free. I'm free because my daughter knows the entire story, that she doesn't have to be perfect. And that was my main motivator. It was not to set the record straight. It was to provide the not the rationale, to provide the foundational wisdom of a mother to a daughter,
Mhm.
that perfection is never going to find you, you know, and you're never going to find it. And that's okay.
Yeah.
So I think we had different motives, maybe, or reasons for writing our books.
Well, and for anyone who's curious and hasn't read it, I mean, both Connie's memoir slash autobiography and yours are, again, so captivating. And for me, I may have an obvious vested interest, but just I devoured both of them. But on this, this sort of like motivation for writing your memoir and that being having something to share with your daughter, on the record, um, from your childhood to your own becoming a mother. Your mom is largely consistent in your memoir, right? And in that, I mean, in the ways we might imagine, for better or worse, unemotional or emotionally unavailable in the way that so many Asian immigrant parents can be, disapproving until there's an element of your career that is now like material with which she or parents can brag about to their peers. But also demonstrating love through acts and deeds that don't always translate or don't meet the moment, like I'm gonna feed you, I'm gonna do housework, but I can't ever just give you that one verbal reassurance or moment that you need. But we realize and we know almost innately that a lot of their behavior and their flaws even are grounded in this stoicism that can be steadying. When we are able to reflect on their sacrifices and what they have endured relative to what we are enduring or sacrificing. But I just would love to hear from you about how your view of your mom widened, in the arc that the memoir covers. Because what I inferred was really this, like, if not forgiveness, certainly acceptance. And that
Yeah.
grew definitely, once you became a mother. Were there turning points for you in your ability to relate to your mom or to just see and accept her and her shortcomings?
Oh, yes. Yes. Barbara, it's hard to write about a Chinese mom and veer too far from the trope. And yet all our mothers are unique individuals too. We talk about that here. She, what I hope to make clear about her is exactly what you were just talking about, her intentions, how she loved me, um, was in many ways similar to the complexities of my first marriage in the book, which is we come to this relationship with intentions and our own way of forgiveness. So to be specific, she starts off, she's the one who tells me no. My father is the one who tells me I can have all the knowledge in the world. She's the one who tells me that my career in journalism is not possible. It's certainly not possible because I'm not as pretty as Connie. I'm not as, I don't look anything like the American women on television. So television was a big cue in our house. The evening news was always on, the Vietnam War in the background, and the beautiful women who, that my mother was, you could practically feel that she was taking notes as to what it was to be an American woman. And so what she wanted for me was very different than what she wanted for my brother. My older brother was to carry on the Chinese tradition, but I was to be as American as apple pie. I think that was her solution to keep me safe. She was an immigrant who escaped communism, one of the last people out of China. And there's a piece of jewelry that is a character in the book. I decided for it to be on the cover. It's pieces of jade in a jade bracelet, a 10-carat jade bracelet. That was a gift from her mother, my grandmother, the day that my grandmother had my mother smuggled out of mainland China to Hong Kong to marry my father, an older man she had not seen in many years, maybe 7 years at that point. It was an arranged marriage. Mm-hmm. But for her safety, she was to be smuggled out. And on the night she was to leave her own mother, my grandmother gifted her this jade. And that story, I didn't, growing up and seeing the jade, which was often in the safety deposit box. So why wear your jewelry when you can keep it in the bank? I knew that it had a backstory. And when I learned more about its deeper meaning was at a very critical juncture in the book when I was at my lowest. And she pressed the jade pieces into my hand. And I didn't quite understand the gesture. It was in a scene that one would not be receiving a gift. And her message to me was that a woman finds her strength through her family, which is one of the themes. Because the message, when my grandmother gave her the jade, it was a wedding gift in the saddest night of my mother's life. She was 21, 22 years old. Mm-hmm. And the message at the time was, you give jewelry to a bride, not in celebration of her marriage, but should anything bad happen, she has something to sell. And the message there was, as much as my mother would love this piece of jewelry, she always had to be prepared to let it go. Mm-hmm. If she was to survive. It was a material thing that could save her. And what it did was serve as a reminder to her, and then subsequently to me, that we have history and family that we can endure. Mm-hmm. And that that the symbolism of the jade was something that I could then pass on to my daughter. It's something women pass to one another. And that's why I wanted it on the cover. But understanding that story and that about my mother was a moment where, despite her criticism of me or her basking in my adjacent light or chasing me, always wanting to know where I was. When you're a traveling correspondent for ABC News, that's not always possible to tell your mother where you are all the time. For all my frustrations, I could remember her as that girl at her mother's garden gate, saying goodbye, not knowing when she would ever see her again, not knowing what her future would be, but that she could hold this jade and understand that there is a thread and a bond and a history that will tie us through time, even when someone leaves. And so I hope I'm answering your question there, but
No, I know
she's
that
such a character.
I know YOLK is going to show the image of the book, but if you know, like you can see this is the jewelry. And I did want to ask you, like, is that an image of the actual bracelet? Or
Yes,
was it okay,
yes.
amazing. And also I noticed that Summer, I think you're wearing jade. Are you wearing jade,
Yeah,
Summer?
my mom gave it to me because
And
yeah, she
well,
gave
and
me
this is
it.
my grandmother's jade, and Carol, it's my paternal grandmother who also, had to flee China for Hong Kong. And my aunt, my father's older sister, gave this to me in my 20s. And so it wasn't passed on with the same story, but it belonged to my grandmother. And I know that, for that reason alone, it has such special meaning. But
Yeah,
Oh, that's great.
it's very Joy Luck Club, seriously. Like the story of your jade necklace because you guys you started it with the beginning of it in your mother partially the beginning and then you ended it with the partial, of the same jewelry and I thought that was beautiful how you placed it to end your story a little bit. I'm not spoiling anything. I'm just saying it's ending and I found that the way you wrote I was wondering how you decide to write it is it in sequential order per se, but it's on like on specific actions that happens in your life. It's like, is it based on events? How
Mhm.
did you choose that kind of way to write a memoir without saying, oh, I was like 5 years old and then that kind of thing. So,
I think it's understanding, that even an object can be a character in the book, and when you introduce that character, it's part of the organic. It has to mean something to the reader.
Mhm.
It's not just it's not just an object. Events in the book are not just events, but they have to mean something, not only to me, the writer, but to you, the reader.
Mhm.
That the idea is that you understand that you're not necessarily thinking about no, let me put it this way. I love that you are wearing your jade. I would wear mine, except it's with my daughter in New York because she's a photographer and she was able to. She's photographing the jade as I need it for bookmarks and gifts and note cards and things of that nature. So I don't have it with me. But see, if my book and the story of my family jade
Mhm.
um, makes you hold your jade and experience the memory in your family,
Mhm.
that is 100% the job of this book. People see themselves in this book. They don't. My assumption is you don't want to know about me because there are far more famous people to read about. You want to see yourself in the pages. And if
Mm.
I can bring a memory to you, if you think of your mother, even people who are not Chinese, they say, oh my gosh, that reminds me of my mom. Or
Bossy.
we
Yeah,
have a
the
piece of.
bossy. You're right.
Yes,
Mothers are bossy, so
yes,
it's relative to everybody. Sorry.
yes.
Mhm.
So when readers, and I've had this experience with early readers, they see themselves, their family, their loved ones, their partners
Mhm.
in the pages, and they want to have a conversation. Infidelity is a topic that we tackle in the book. And I've had friends tell me their own stories. And
Mm.
these spark connections between people. We become closer because we've had a shared experience, and it's not something that organically comes up at dinner, right, or the Christmas party.
Mhm.
But yeah, I'm so thrilled to see both of you wearing your jade and having your own stories to tell.
Mine doesn't have come with a story. She just gave it to me because she has a ton of costume jewelry, so I didn't think I would get anything from her. So I didn't know when she gave it to me. So yours is, a better story. I'm sure Barbara has a better story about the jade, but mine is
yours
just,
might have a story, Summer. We just haven't learned it.
oh, really?
Right? Ask. There's a story there. There's a reason why she gave that to you, and
Uh-huh.
she might didn't, or in your process of discovery, at first people kind of poo-poo it, and then you dig a little deeper, and there's always a story. There's always a reason why.
Mm-hmm. I gotta say it's and I'll leave it to Barbara, but your story, your whole book like started to be basically your life, right? And then it got more serious and you opened up so much that it made me cry. Of course, the 9/11 experience was made me cry because we were all there about
Mhm.
experiencing that in one way or another. But then it was like the other stuff here, serious stuff that just made me like feel, and I was like, oh, God, it's like making me emotional right now, just remembering it.
Well, that's a good opportunity to maybe dip back in because, and there's two directions we can go. So, Carol, I will let you pick one. There is a scene, and it's one that Publishers Weekly actually cites as being this, symbol of career sacrifice. And it resonated so much with me as someone who had, gone across country and made my way somewhat up this ladder and was supposed to be like not having it all, but having this theoretically great career. And yet I was alone on a major holiday, except that I was surrounded by my colleagues, none of whom were really like family. We're all sort of obligated to be there. And on the phone across the country, people are celebrating and like congratulating you, but you actually, I went home and just felt like lonely and like maybe even a little bit depressed. But so there's that scene, which I would one we can get into, and then there's another. This gets at toward the end of the book, and we don't want to spoil it for anybody, but it's the part of the book where I think you are really honing in on what matters and the value of life and your lives when you and Will, your husband at the time, and your daughter are facing imminent death. And so I hate to like make you choose, but I wonder if you might share one of those passages.
Oh, that's hard. So you choose. Which one do you want to
Okay,
hear?
Summer, you choose. Summer, you
Well,
choose.
I don't want people to like um get the spoiler before them, right? So I want them to experience her emotional transparency on their own. Like if we did a return interview, then we
Okay,
can
so
totally like,
Thanksgiving. So let's go to
yeah, yeah,
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving. I was gonna say,
Okay. Well,
or
all they need to do is pick up the book and then they can
Mhm,
find out for
mhm.
themselves.
Yeah, that was
No, there's
to
so
me
many
that was
stories.
life-changing because she it enforced her family like focal point of family.
Yeah. No,
And yeah.
the book really surprisingly threads back to family. That wasn't my intent. It's kind of what happens when you write authentically, and revision is where the magic happens. When for anybody who's interested in writing, your first draft is not going to be your book. You think it's
Mhm.
going to be because you work so hard on it. The magic happens in revision, and that's where you begin to notice patterns and recurring themes and the memories that your brain just will not let go of. So we've been talking a lot about the sacrifice of career, and I think that um, Publishers Weekly Book Life focused in on this scene because the professional reviewer, strongly sensed that one of the major themes of the book was, what are you willing to let go of, if anything? And when you have the things that people value, like, well, you rose from this intern over the years to be at ABC News Good Morning America. And in fact, that particular Thanksgiving, Carol, you got to substitute host for Joan London. You were going to co-anchor Good Morning America with Charlie Gibson. That is an opportunity that you cannot give up. So what's Thanksgiving dinner when you can be in a New York studio at what you might think at the time is the height of your career, a moment that you'll never say no to? And so I'll just read the scene as it unfolded and sort of what happened, and you guys can decide. The Thanksgiving Day show closed the showcase of our TV family, with us sitting at a long dining table stocked with all the holiday fixings, a giant roasted turkey, dozens of colorful side dishes, salads, and candied pies and cakes. A red and white floral centerpiece surrounded a ceramic cornucopia bursting with real apples, pears, and oranges. Off camera, the producers motioned for us to take our seats. And as one might imagine, happy families around the country would also do, except we were digging into a turkey at 8:55 a.m. in a New York City television studio. I was curious if I was supposed to eat the food for real. It certainly looked that way as everyone went through the motions of passing trays and scooping turkey and mashed potatoes onto fine china plates. Charlie asked me to pass the gravy, and so I did. And I grinned back at him, everyone cheerfully talking all at once, like siblings after a long time apart. My childhood Thanksgivings were never this abundant. My parents didn't like leftovers or the possibility of food going to waste. When we had all the big plates of food, the show's theme music broke through, and we lifted our glasses in a toast. Before we took a single sip, the producer counted us down. 3, 2, 1, and you're clear. The music stopped, and so did our Thanksgiving celebration. Like Cinderella at the stroke of midnight, Charlie, Spencer, Kevin, and a few of the show's interview guests set down their wine glasses and fled the studio with a wave and a happy Thanksgiving. I had pretended too that I had somewhere to be, but instead I walked alone across Central Park. It was so cold, the grass crunched under my boots, and I kept saying to myself, that was great, right? I bought a can of soup and a bag of donuts from the grumpy cashier at a corner mart and returned to my corporate apartment where I sat on the floor, popped the top of my ready-to-serve meal, and dug in sloppily straight from the can. The solitude was stark, almost enough to distract me from Will's one terrible mistake, now 3 years behind us. My cell phone rang. Hi, Stinks. It was Will. I could hear my mom fussing in the background, pans clanging, her muttering about too much food. She was getting ready to cook. You were great. We all just watched. I don't think our table will look as good as yours. How was it? I had told Will and my mother that staying in New York and co-hosting Good Morning America was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, but now I wondered if that was true. I listened to the laughter in my own kitchen 3,000 miles away. We caught up and Will passed the phone around so my mom could say hi and friends could wish me a happy Thanksgiving. And then it struck me that spending 2 hours on television before 7 million people was the loneliest I had ever been. Yeah, not ungrateful. I want to make sure that your listeners and viewers do not perceive me as being ungrateful. I wanted that career. I cherished that career. I understood the value of where I was and how few people get that opportunity. What this is just an honest reflection that was going to lead me forward in the book to face what I was going to face. And it was these experiences that were going to reframe my future and how I would make decisions maybe that a lot of people wouldn't make. Why would you give all this up? Can't you figure it out, Carol? Other people do. But I think there's something unique about the childhood story that I think people hopefully will see and understand that, you know, it all begins in the beginning. And ultimately, it may not play, it'll play out for the next 50 years. And then you have a deeper understanding of your why. That's all I can say.
No, I'm so glad that you are clarifying that for everyone, and because I guess, I do love that from an early age, it seemed very clear that you hungered for and really reveled in information and discovering it and assembling it. And that was influenced very deeply by your dad. And, he had gifted you this set of encyclopedia, which for those of us who remember what the expanse of these leather bound not inexpensive books were, and it's like they were basically like, pre-Google, you would have to look things up. And anyway, what advice would you give? This is a little bit of a jump, but it's connected. What advice might you give to people who still struggle with pursuing what they think they love, or need to permit themselves to do what they love? Like, is
Mm.
knowing what you know, what advice might you offer?
To give yourself grace, to understand that we can, that less can be more, that I don't know a single person at this, we talk about a summit of their career, who is truly deeply happy. I've never met that person. I've met people who've learned lessons. I've met people who are grateful for what they have. But if you really, really, really ask them, do you feel peace? Do you have a sense of belonging and connection to yourself and to others? I haven't met that person who has everything that we think we strive for. You know, we give up that family time. We move, you know, across the country. We do all that. And this is not to ignore privilege or pragmatics. You know, I think each of us, and we've spoken privately, we all have our own challenges. Everybody does. But I don't ignore the fact that I have privilege because of the sacrifice my parents gave or made. I know people, we have to eat. It gets harder and harder every day to put bread on the table.
Mhm.
You know, a small basket of strawberries here, and nobody forced me to live in Hawaii, but it's $12. How are these families with, you know, 6 kids on the island feeding themselves? These are real problems. So I know that I speak from a place of privilege, but to give yourself grace and to say and to be patient and to understand that less can be more, and you decide what that ratio is. You you decide. I have choice, because sometimes I think we get locked in with, I don't have a choice, I can't say no, I can't say no. And that's what I said for so long, until there's a moment in the book where I face saying no, and you know all the reasons why, you know all that went into that decision. I could have kept going, but I had to say no. And I had to say no because a person like me and how I grew up and all that you know about me by then, that person, that woman had to choose. Not all women, but this person. And I was forced to choose a different life because I had become this person shaped by, I can't say no. And had I said no earlier on, maybe other things would have happened. It's like that Gwyneth Paltrow vintage movie, Sliding Doors, you know, had I gone left, right, maybe things would be different. And, you know, when we face this crisis, this health crisis with Will, I blamed myself. I thought, why didn't I say no sooner? What if we had moved back home sooner? What if I had given him more choice sooner? What if the guilt? You know, maybe would life have been different? I don't know, but I would say that I would have faced different choices. So that's a lot to advise someone who might be at that crossroads in their life or their career. But I also learned something in this grief process in the book, that as much as we feel that all is lost, our brains organically have this remarkable ability to heal if we provide ourselves the right circumstances, self-care and all that good stuff. But you know, the human body is amazing, and our brains are phenomenal at helping to guide us to our solutions. We just have to begin to tune out the noise. And I think for us, you know, we've talked about this Asian value, but I think it's a lot of people's value of listening to, you know, listening to your elders or listening to people with more experience. But in the end, you kind of get bossed around and you have to find your own voice. So I think that requires grace, the patience, and asking yourself, telling yourself you have choice. I have choice in this. What do I choose? What would I do without all these voices in my ear?
Speaking of choice, I gotta say, you were sitting in the plane next to a bad person, a
Oh, well,
murderer. I'm not gonna say
I
it because
hate
I don't
labeling
want
somebody a bad person, but I guess yes,
a murderer.
we do think O.J. Simpson
Yeah,
killed his wife.
yeah,
Yes,
allegedly
I'm
murder. I don't
sitting
want
next to
to.
O.J. Simpson.
Oh my God. Okay, so I didn't want to spoil it for them, but yeah, you said so speaking of the choices, you and you decided not to, speak to him and stuff. But I was wondering in journalism for you, actually, you guys, how do you decide when you want to go for the story or just go? Because you in the thing you guys have like um it says rules of journalism, grab and go, where you guys always did. And then I was fascinated. That's about the lingo that you guys talk about. Like, I like the fact, don't tell me about birth, show me the baby. That's really funny. Yeah. Um, and anywhere I went, it was all about who had the power, escaping death for living. Time is a currency. All that stuff, which Barbara just mentioned, time currency. It's like I never heard of these things before, and it just seems really high stakes. So I was wondering, how do you choose? Why did you not talk to that bad person, or or just the moment?
That suspected murderer.
Yeah, alleged.
Um,
Yeah.
well, so what Summer's talking about is a scene in the book, and it's a point where it's after the Thanksgiving dinner, and I'm really beginning to not only realize that being at the network, which is what so many people strive, that's the mark of success in broadcast journalism. Being at the network is not all that I imagined. And I was beginning to manifest physical symptoms of that too. A certain kind of exhaustion where I just get on a plane, and I went from plane to plane to plane. I lived on airplanes the way New Yorkers take taxis or Ubers now. And I was exhausted, and I woke up and O.J. Simpson was sitting next to me, which would have been a dream opportunity. He had just been acquitted in his uh, in his first
Criminal
trial.
trial.
He was facing his civil trial, and here he was sitting next to me. And the last thing I wanted to do was talk to O.J. Simpson. I just didn't want that. And that to me tells me like a journalist just goes for it. Grab and go, you go, because the story is all that matters. And I think other things were beginning to matter to me because my health was suffering. I was so exhausted that a doctor had prescribed sleep. He grounded me, and I took a note to Good Morning America and said, I can't fly for a month. There's something wrong with me. But the O.J. Simpson story is an example of how far off the deep end I had gone, because up until that point, all I ever wanted was the story. And I was at a point where I didn't know what I wanted anymore. And I think I was still searching. But yeah, the ethos of a journalist, your instinct is you do anything for that story.
Hmm.
I think that's how I knew that I was never going to be on air, and that this wasn't the end all be all. Like, I was thrilled to have been invited to work at the network, albeit as a total peon on the overnight shift. And I was really fortunate, to go on the road with World News Tonight and to have these promotions and to see it all and, like, be up on that executive suite as an assistant. Um, but I also recognized very early, like, I didn't have that gene or that, like, thing that made you go for it. And I remember Carol having an assignment editor, and he said to me, it was like a weekend day shift, which was a privilege in the beginning of my career. And he said, what if you saw so and so, and it was some, like, politician in some scandal of the moment? Like, what would you do? And basically he was like, you need to run after that person and like get them until you get them to answer your question. And I remember feeling very clearly in my body that, like, I probably wouldn't have done that, like, and
Yeah.
I can't even tell you why. Like, I love the architecting of a story, and I love, making sense of people's stories and trying to distill some, greater universal truth for people to reflect on. And I love this, dialogue, but that component of journalism just never appealed to me. And
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so I very much respect, and also I could feel like the bone deep exhaustion that you wrote about, at more than one time. And if we fast forward in the book, what I imagined feeling, or I couldn't imagine how you must have felt. So we move well on into like the third or final one of the final parts of the book. You are now traveling with Will, who is dying of cancer, your infant daughter, and I can't remember if the cat was with you or not, or the dog was with
Yeah,
you or not.
the
Yes,
cat
the
was with
cat
her.
was
The
with
cat was
us.
with her.
And I just remember thinking like, so I have a 3-year-old, and even traveling with a healthy small person is hard. It's very hard in a way you can't totally understand or feel unless you've done it. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like that journey alone would be soul crushing and like spirit breaking. And you managed to do it, I think, because you didn't have a choice.
Mhm.
I just wonder, when you're in that valley, was there a mantra that you employed, a prayer that you said, or was it really
Yeah.
just like when you're going through hell, you have no choice but to keep going?
So, Barbara, I think it speaks to the experiences that we have prepare us for the next. And I love this example that you're bringing up because, you know, first of all, you're relating to it as a young mother, and you know how difficult that is. But the mantra is, I've done this before, I can do it again. Only when I was doing it before, it was for work, right? When I'd face these impossible situations logistically just to get to the story. I mean, I remember, World News Tonight, I was a West Coast based correspondent, and World News Tonight aired at 3:30, it was live 3:30 West Coast time in New York, right? So if you're an LA bureau correspondent, your story has to be in the can by 3 or 3:25. Which how much time does that give you to start from zero every day and in 5 hours or 6 hours, you're going to have a full-fledged story that Peter Jennings is going to approve. I mean, and you're beating the odds every single day. How the hell am I going to do that? I've had stories where I'd have to catch a plane, get in a car, there's a landslide on the highway. Your deadline doesn't change, just your physical circumstances change. I have to figure out how to get around the landslide. I have to do this, do this, do this, just to get the interview on video,
Mhm.
right? Because I work in broadcast journalism. So in all of that experience, all of that hardship, understanding the physicality that was failing me at times in my career because I was so exhausted. And then here I'm at the brink of a different kind of story where I have to get my very sick husband and a newborn and a cat and my mother across country somehow. So two people with compromised immune systems. And I did have to go to some extreme measures, and CNN did help me, but it's a lot. I had to pack up a house, right? And she was only a few weeks old, so my body was still recovering. But I've done it before, I can do it again. And I think that applies to not just me, but to any of us. And I tell that to my daughter when she's going through something where,
Mhm.
she thinks, how am I going to I can't do this. And I'm like, well, what about the time it was like this? Or you've done harder things. And somehow it gives her the energy to just give it a try. You've got it in you because you've done it before. So you could do it one more time. And I also think I give ourselves, frankly, a lot of credit as women. I mean, we have this remarkable ability to bring life into the world and then carry the social and emotional loads of our families, even when we have great partners. Um, so hats off there, all women and mothers out there.
Is there any way you ever had I'm sorry, is there any report or story that you didn't get during your high peak of working at CNN or any other place?
I mean, early on, I can only think of one assignment that I failed at because failure is not an option, is just not. So I can honestly say there is not a story that I didn't get. So I'm going to two short stories. One story is my producer at the CNN Bureau, and I was an intern. He wanted me to call everyone named Vicky in the phone book. So back in the day when we had paper phone books, and there were like millions of people in the city of Los Angeles, and I had to call everyone named Vicky because there was someone in the news that everybody was chasing, and that was his solution, was to have me call everyone named Vicky, which was a losing proposition. And then the second time, shoot, I should have written this down. The second time was when I was in Pakistan, and it was the last week that I was there before I was going to go home. I'd done my 8-week rotation. This was after 9/11. I was in a border town in Pakistan, on the border town of a border of Afghanistan. And the Atlanta assignment desk said that AP Wire is quoting the Taliban spokesperson at the border crossing. They shouted, the AP reporter shouted, you know, where is Osama bin Laden, as the Taliban spokesperson is driving through the border checkpoint. And he said, I don't know. He could be in Pakistan. He could be in Afghanistan. He could be anywhere. So the Atlanta assignment desk translated that to mean that Osama bin Laden might be in Pakistan. So they call and they tell me about this wire report, and they tell me to go find out if that's true. It's like, you want me to find out if Osama bin Laden is in Pakistan.
Because people will so willingly tell you.
NATO. How am I supposed to do this? So the way we approach that story, obviously, I'm not going to find out where Osama bin Laden is. But we were able to do a story about someone who was an alleged advisor to him, a Pakistani warlord, and we were able to get an interview with him about that notion of whether he was here, and also show that because the US had already invaded southern Afghanistan and had theoretically had control of Afghanistan at that point, and the Taliban had fled to the hills, that Osama bin Laden's posters, which had been posted in all these public squares and forums in southern Pakistan, the posters, it's almost like the losing team of the Super Bowl. So after the US took hold of southern Afghanistan, all of a sudden Osama bin Laden's posters were being ripped up and, you know, in the streets. So that's the story we ended up doing. So I didn't fail at the story, but I certainly didn't find Osama bin Laden. Very unlikely.
Well, you and basically no one else either.
Well, eventually.
Yeah. And PSA for anyone who's listening, and don't be misled that this is, you know, extensive international news coverage and like the war on terror. I mean, there is a beautiful story, a love story in this memoir between you and Will. And it is so honestly, unflinchingly retold, you know. And I, even in the earliest chapters, before we get into the later parts of your life together, I was just so struck, Carol. It's just such a meeting of the minds and the bodies. It gets really spicy, guys, and souls, and it's just, you know, the love of a lifetime. And I am so glad that you did get to experience that. And it also casts into such stark relief the choices and the changes that then you both, you know, endure together. So just, you know, my heart to you.
Thank you. You know, thank you for saying that. It's interesting when you write memoir that you get to be with your people again. You know, you get to have an even greater understanding of the relationships one of my favorite chapters is actually the last chapter, because understanding love as I did at that point helped me love again in an equally amazing and powerful way. I'm not going to say any more about it, but it's really my favorite chapter is the last chapter, because there's a mirror to the first chapter, the long and winding road. changes to a beautiful ride to the beach at the end. Um, and and so the love story, while it involves my first husband, um, I think you mentioned it earlier, Barbara. It's learning to love yourself so that you can love more fully and deeply and with grace and patience, as any long-term relationship requires. One thing my editor and publisher noted when she was first judging whether she was going to buy the rights to the book is she noticed things that I took for granted. She noted that, oh my gosh, work is so intertwined in your love story, in your relationship. And it really was very much about two journalists coming together. The news brought us together. It almost tore us apart. It tested us in ways we couldn't imagine. And I found some artifacts that I included in the book of actual letters that we had written to each other. And she was the one who made note. Oh my goodness, all these news metaphors, even in love letters. The work was so much a part of your life. And I didn't even realize how much until I wrote this. You see your relationships for what they are, and you see your work for what it is. But I never realized how intertwined all of it was, these two great loves, all at once.
Yeah.
I love the love letters or the letters that
Oh,
you have. Yeah.
exactly. I was like, oh my
That you
gosh,
added.
letters. And
And
you
you guys
have
yell at
them.
each
Yeah,
other.
yeah.
You
Yeah.
guys, yeah, call each other stinks and stuff. That's really,
Nicknames. Yeah.
yeah.
I actually, they didn't come into the book until very late, because my beta readers, and one of them included my daughter, she said, you don't write Will the way you write other people. And I was, what? Are you kidding
Mm.
me? And yeah, she goes, I don't know why. It's like something's stopping you from just going there. And there's a period in our relationship where we're tested very deeply.
Mhm.
Um, and in order for you to, people, beta readers would say, we were rooting for you, but we don't like him. Oh, he's the reason
Mm.
why I didn't date guys like that. Or, oh, he's the reason why I married my husband instead of my boyfriend from this other era in my life. And I thought, no, Will's being deeply misunderstood. And why is that? What am I doing that is not making clear who he was? And so that you could understand how flawed any of us can be, where his motivations came from. So he ended up doing an awful thing, but don't we all, which is part of the morality tale as you read through the book. None of us is perfect. And so I had to find a way to bring the reader even deeper into the relationship. And then I remembered the letters, which had survived this whole time.
Mm.
So I wish all the young people out there, yeah, texting is one thing, but putting a pen to a piece of paper lasts forever. And write that love letter.
Those letters took my breath away. I was swooning, you know.
You
it was
were.
so,
Oh,
oh, it's so romantic. I mean, it was one, the quaintness of that you had exchanged letters over miles and months.
Mhm.
no
Two,
internet.
that there existed this archive, right? That like how extraordinary that was. And three, the quality of literature, like the things that you wrote to each other. I was like, these are two great intellects and they are fusing, like I couldn't get enough of it. So yeah,
Romantically. So,
yeah.
yeah.
I know that speaking of final and last chapters, we are probably coming up on the conclusion of at least this conversation. So I definitely want to give Summer. I know you always have this fun segment, if you will, that we do. Is there anything else we want to ask before we move to that?
Oh yeah. Thank you, Barbara. And I'm so grateful for Barbara to do this because she has
Me too.
the experience and knowledge and eloquent way of talking. I just do everything by emotion. That's why I don't do what you guys do.
You're great.
No, it takes a lot of after reading her book, it takes a lot of you guys to kind of like have a controlled um, and more ambitious type of way of utilizing your emotion in the best way to tell a story without. It's really, I don't know. I'm very impressed how you guys handle it. It's nothing I
It's
have
a
ever
lot of
seen.
work.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
It's a lot of work.
you have to use all your senses and all of
Yeah.
it. So it's really great. So I love the fact. The only one thing I want to say shortly is that fact that Carol said all of the work, but I get none of the credit. And and
Oh,
I
yeah, because
yeah yeah I
yeah,
find.
my daughter presents as white. Yeah.
Oh, really? Okay, because I love that because you actually did say you did in a feminist book. It's not a feminist. It's just understanding the female point of view, and it really I don't I think that it was very open for women or men to understand, right? And we won't talk about the other part, like the 4%. But I love the POV of your form, like your husband, Will, who said that. It was lovely that he changed
Mm,
perspective. And it was just at the
yeah, we're talking about a scene where
Mhm.
he's being offered a surgical intervention, but the doctor is warning that there's only a 4% chance that it's going to work and that he might die on the operating table. And Will says, well, that's 4% that I have right now.
It was lovely. So like all these words you use and the way you picture vi like write it visually, it helps the reader really immerse into your life. So it
Thank
was
you.
very touching. Yeah. Okay, before I cry over her story, we gotta do the 10 questions. Okay.
It's okay. We're a safe space.
Yeah, this is a
Yeah,
rapid
we're
fire.
totally in a safe space. Although this lightning round coming up is a little scary.
No, no. Um, First of all, yeah, the rapid 10 questions is your favorite color.
Orange,
Yeah, really simple, right? Like coffee or boba?
coffee, hot,
Black?
black.
Oh man, you guys are
I
beast
know.
animals.
Rough. Can't always find milk or cream on the road, you know? You got to go go with black coffee.
Because you're so culturally, how do you say it, experienced, I couldn't pick food groups with you. But I guess what would you say your main dish that you would love that would really make you feel good or joy?
My mother's fried rice, but I love sushi. Love
Mm.
sushi. I could eat it every single day. Poke, sushi. Yeah.
I love that. Star Trek or Star Wars? But
Ooh. I'll have
Mhm.
to say Star Trek. Classic.
I wonder if Barbara, I wonder if I should have said Wall Street Journal or like some kind of journalism, ABC
Of
or
a different
CNN.
era.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
newspapers, you'd have to qualify like which era we're talking about.
Copy, copy. Okay. Um, Book or song, what motivates you?
Oh, I'm one of those older Swifties. Honestly, I just, but honestly, I know she's the biggest pop star in the world and it's so cliche, but come on. When you're really feeling it, don't you put Taylor Swift on? No.
Um,
I,
Although I
I should
think she would
say something
love,
a little more artful, but that's the truth.
yeah,
I
yeah,
really,
no. Yeah, I think she would love that you love her. I honestly do. Because she has a wide variety of people
There's
who
a
love her.
reason she is who she is and has reached what she has. I
No,
mean,
because I like
yeah.
1950s. I like 1950s songs, so that's why I don't qualify. I'm not qualified
I
fan.
feel like she, we, to whatever degree we all, a lot of, oh, here's the cat.
hi.
A lot of us grew
Billy.
up with, no, this is Oreo. Billy
Oh
is
no.
across the Rainbow Bridge a while ago. This is
Sorry.
Oreo. What was I gonna say? Oh, that with Taylor Swift, her career has just tracks our emotional arc. I mean, it's like we came of age one
Mhm.
way or another to her music.
Yeah, no, my favorite is the Romeo and Juliet, which is so old, that song. That one's pretty, joyful and stuff and romantic.
If
Uh,
if you read the lyrics to Red, I mean, just don't listen to the song, just read the lyrics. It's phenomenal.
Red?
Yeah.
Okay.
And yeah.
Um,
Anyway,
streaming or
clearly a
theater?
Swiftie.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Streaming or movie
Oh, I
theater?
love theater. I love theater. There's we just were talking about a theater that had closed here, and
Oh,
it's like, how does a theater close in a family neighborhood? Come on, kids don't know the joy of going to the theater.
I know. That's it's a big deal to watch it like that with the surround sound and with everybody.
Yeah, with
Um,
other people.
yeah, agreed.
That's how I experienced Star Wars.
Yes, yes, yes. I know, I love.
Yeah,
Which superpower would you want to have right now in your point in your life?
definitely not reading people's minds. I do not want to know. I would love to fly. Wouldn't you love to fly? I'd love to
Uh,
fly.
Teleportation is quicker. I don't get motion sickness. I think that would be the best one.
I'm a little uncertain about, when your cells, like
Yeah.
I'm not sure how they're going to come together on the other side. I
Yeah.
still have that element of control in me.
No, I love that point of view. I guess I should worry about that too. Okay, mom or dad, Carol? Which one
For,
inspires you? Inspires you.
oh, I thought it was my mom. And then I wrote this book and it was dad.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It just happened.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you did
Dad
an
was a huge,
arc. You did an arc for your mom. You kind of like in the beginning to
for
the end.
sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Um,
But
okay,
he
that
was the one who first convinced me I could do whatever I set my mind to.
yeah. Isn't it? It's lovely, right, Barbara, to have a male patriarchal thing, but encourage you to be whoever you want to be. I think that's
I think it is so fortunate to have any parent
mhm.
allow
Yeah.
that or
Oh,
nurture
okay. Yeah.
that even inadvertently,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And we can be grateful that that existed for Carol. I mean, we might not have had a Carol Lynn were it not for your dad.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Last question is, if you had to escape anywhere, where would you bring in a box? Three things you would bring in a box.
How big is the box?
Everybody always asks that. The thing is, it could be any big box. If you could carry it, I guess you can do it. Like,
Okay. I mean, there are obviously this people aside. So I would bring my jade because that's irreplaceable. I
I'm still going to,
would,
yeah.
there's a picture of me. I'm 2 years old. It's black and white, and I'm 2 years old, and I'm in my family kitchen, and I'm reaching for an apple, but I know I can't see. I'm reaching for something I can't see, but you, the viewer, can see it's an apple. And I love that picture.
Hmm.
That picture sat on every desk I've ever had, except the one that I'm sitting at right now. It's the pictures.
Is it a
So the black and white,
metaphor? Is it a metaphor for believing that you can reach the
yes,
unknown?
Mhm.
yeah. Like I'm on my tippy toes, and I'm in one of these, old fashioned little, I don't know, jumper suits, and I'm two. I'm probably about 2 years old, and I'm just reaching. Just my hand is arching for the
Hmm.
apple. I'm sure I can't see it. So I love that photo. So the jade, that photo, and there's a picture of the beach house that is featured in the book, and it's with the sold sign in front of it. So we took a picture
Aw.
of the house with it, and it's on my desk. And what that symbolizes to me is the dream. Ever since I was a little kid, I wanted to live at the beach. I had this thing about living at the beach.
Mhm.
Um, and so it's a picture of when we first got that house.
Oh my gosh.
Those are things
That's
irreplaceable.
beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah.
Because it's not, I should digitize it because it's not, it was back in the day when you develop film. So there's
Yeah.
only one copy.
You
Yeah.
should. You can even, poor woman's version. You just take a picture of a picture and then you can convert,
Yeah.
you can take the glare out or whatever and save it as a PDF or
Yeah.
an image.
Oh,
And
that
then I could
reminds
put it
me.
on a cloud.
Mhm.
So the cloud is relatively new at this recording, the date of this recording. And I was asking my husband, Mike, you know, what is this cloud? and how do I get on? Because you put all of Chloe's baby pictures on the cloud.
Oh my God.
And I don't know where they are.
I still don't
So,
totally
no.
understand the cloud. I've just surrendered to its existence.
Oh,
Yeah, but is that cloud the same cloud that I have now? Because I use a cloud. Is that the same cloud? Where are her baby pictures?
uh,
Anyway, it's a
yeah.
problem.
Because your ending had a cliffhanger, I feel like, oh, congratulations on your marriage with Mike.
So you'll read more about him in the acknowledgments.
Copy, copy. Thank you so much. I'm gonna take a picture of us because yeah, because I do. Ready? One, two, three. Okay, and secondly, thank you to the OG Yoke team and also Carol Lynn for being our guest, and Barbara Chen for taking time out to speak to for us for OG Yoke to be on the more serious tone, but also such so much education, woman. You're so good. Thank you so much for both ladies. It's a very amazing and like the sisterhood is to uplift voices and also to uplift the your companions of in whatever field it is. You have to support it. So we look forward to your book. And Barbara, please give a say. I don't know
Yes,
how you say it. Yeah,
please.
tone out.
If you are looking for When News Breaks, it's available on Amazon as of, I think, December 9th. Is that right, Carol?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yep.
So go there,
Bookstores
buy
everywhere.
it. I am going to buy several copies for my fellow, well, women I still know who are still in journalism, but also for
Aw.
people who are not even in the industry. Again, as I say, it's an amazing love story, a story of discovering your own self-love. It was very easy to read in terms of like being captivated and gripped and never being bored or wondering what was happening next. Like I wanted to know what would happen next in the best way. It made me cry and gasp, and you will not regret picking this book up.
Are you gonna do a book signing tour?
Well, if somebody invites me and enough people show up, I am down for it. No, a lot of opportunity, honestly, is exactly like being with you here at the Yoke.
Thank you.
It's so awesome. And, we've had pre-sales and there's going to be a signing at Barnes& and Noble here in Honolulu sometime early. So I'll be out and about. My goal is to be in the cities where the book takes place. So Los Angeles, specifically Manhattan Beach, shout out to Paige's Bookstore,
Mhm.
and San Francisco, New York, and Atlanta. So yes, there will be kind of a rolling launch, if you will. I'm
Mhm.
just thrilled that you guys have read it. I loved this conversation. I'm so grateful for your feedback and your recommendations and the community that you're serving. Thank you so
Oh,
much.
thank you, thank you. And I forgot.
Cool.
Thank you to Jennifer Toom for introducing us to you. So,
Yeah, go
yeah, my
Jen
friend.
Tim.
Yeah, thank you, Jen. Um, and I wish you guys to stay safe and healthy during this winter and good holiday.
You too.
Bye.
You too.
Stay tuned for the next episode. Pop the yolk and spread the love. Yolk is back, 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 back.